we're looking at the first slide, which is Lankavatara Sutra. Now that we have gained all the modern concepts, we're going to go back to the ancient Buddhist text and see how that relates to the ancient Buddhist text. Okay? How do you say that first word? The ancient text, Buddhist text, are difficult to read. Okay? Even the very first alphabet or the very first word is a vocabulary. So it turns people off when we look at the ancient text. That's why in this A-B curriculum, what we try to do is introduce the concept first. Make sure all the classmates are already familiar with the concept. Then go back to the ancient sutra and see what the sutra is actually saying. This is a much more effective way of introducing Buddhism. If you take the ancient sutra out first, well, there's a language barrier, there is a logical barrier, cultural barrier, there's so many barriers, it makes it impossible to appreciate the sutras. So what I'm talking about now is going to take the sutra, take us back about 2,000 years back in time, and see how the Buddhists at the time, what they are talking about, what they were discussing. This very first sutra is called the Lankavatara Sutra. If you just look at the first prefix of this word Lanka, L-A-N-K-A, you might associate with the country Sri Lanka. Actually, the word Sri, S-R-I, Sri, means liberated. Lanka, thousands of years ago, used to be the country of Lanka until Siddhamuni Buddha traveled from India to this island of Lanka. In fact, he visited the island 3 times, and of course every time he preaches. And this is one of the sutra, a record of his teaching when he was teaching in the island of Lanka. And that is why this sutra is named Lanka Sutra. Tara simply means profound. So this is a profound teaching that the Buddha taught in the island of Lanka. This is a Chinese version of it. Starting from page 24 onwards, I'll just fast forward this Chinese version of the sutra. You know, Chinese words are very condensed. Someone asked the Buddha a series of questions from page 24 all the way to page 31. There are 7 pages of questions that one of the disciples asked the Buddha. And on page 32, where there's a circle, this is where the Buddha answered, very sparingly. And the Buddha referred to dimensions, units of number, length, and weight. Okay, now let's go to the English version. So in the very beginning of the Lankavatara Sutra, chapter 1, the name of his disciple is Great Wisdom. In fact, he wasn't the Buddha's disciple yet. He's just another bodhisattva who attended the congregation, and he introduced himself. He said, Great Buddha, the knowledgeable one, my name is Great Wisdom. I have many questions I want to know the answer to. And then he began asking 108 profound questions. And this 108 profound question spans all subject matters. And all human beings, even all beings beyond human beings, wants to know the answer to these big questions. But the Buddha did not answer these questions directly. Instead, he answered a question with a question. He said, Great Wisdom, Bodhisattva, why did you not ask even more pressing and more relevant questions, please? So, what are these pressing and relevant questions that the Bodhisattva was asking? This question begins with, how can one be cleansed of false intellect, blah, 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 okay? So if you would please kindly just escape from this PowerPoint for a moment, and we'll bring up the Word document. I'm not happy with the English translation, so I will translate loosely as I go along. Some of the questions he asked, including, how to purify our mind. Why does our wandering thoughts decreases? How can we see the error in our thinking mode? How come our distorted thinking mode can perpetuate itself? Why are there transformation or destruction or impermanence even on the planet, on the earth? Why have all these other philosophers and other schools of thought emerges? What is the meaning of no perception? Why do we call ourselves disciples of the Buddha? After we liberate ourselves, where do we go after liberation? Who is finding us? Why do we need to be liberated? What is Zen? Why are there different vehicles to attain Buddhahood? Please explain all this to me. If we go down a little bit, what is the distinguishing of the thought process? How do we attain tranquility in Zen meditation? What is reincarnation? What kind of body do we incarnate into? Why are there differences? So many different varieties of forms. Why are we born in the different realms? Blah, blah, blah. What is samadhi? What is stillness and meditation? Why is there life and death? Born and reborn? Why do we born into different classes? And so on. In other words, every kind of questions that we would ask, or we have not thought about asking, has been asked to the Buddha. All the phenomenology in this universe, all the thinking processes, okay, all the knowns and unknowns has been posed through the Buddha. And then how did the Buddha answer? So we just keep on going. I won't translate all this. The point is, every conceivable question that can be asked of any subject matter has been asked 2,000 years ago. And here's the Buddha's answer. It says, if the capacity of your heart is not open, you will not attain any of the level, any of the grounds. The word ground means level or grade. You won't attain any grade. It is like medicine to the sick. This technique will allow you to understand all of the universe, from the Himalayas to all the oceans and seas, the sun and the moon, and all the different types of beings on their body. How many particles are there? That's how the Buddha answered. He wants the Bodhisattva to contemplate how many particles. Well, in those days we used the term how many dust. These days we say particles. How many particles make up the body of every sentient being and the universe? So he wants people to start thinking at the microscopic view. So then, if we go down a little, then he starts talking about, can you tell how many particles are there in the planets in terms of distance? How many Dhammas, Yogana, and Yogana, remember all these Indian measurements. 2 feet make up 1 arm length, 4 arm length make up 1 pole length. So he starts using dimensions, different dimensions, units of measurement. Then he goes into all these atoms making one dust particle on a window. 7 window dust particles make up 1 hair particle on the rabbit. And then 7 particles on the hair rabbit makes up 1 on the ram, which is the goat. So basically, this is not very accurate, but the point being, the big things are made up of smaller things, right, as we have gone through that. So, of course, the science at the time did not permit them to elucidate the way we elucidated earlier on this afternoon, but the concept here is valid. And then, after measurements in length, then there's measurement in number. After measurement in number, it goes into weight quantifying. So let's keep going down. Then it goes into, in a mustard seed, how many atoms are there? How many mustard seeds make up one wheat seed? How many wheat seeds make up one bean? How many beans are there in one garner? And then from the tiny, tiny, immeasurable, making up the bigger and bigger matters. And then with all these accumulated numbers, how many powders are there in the mountain Sumer, which is basically the Himalaya at the time? You should ask me first. Why do you ask me all those 108 questions? These are the fundamental questions you should be asking me first. Right? So he gave him the answer to the fundamental question. He ignored his 108 questions. So, 2,000 years ago, this is the Buddha's teaching. Start with microscopic, macroscopic view. Start with what constitutes what. Force open our mind. Before you even try to attack any big questions, we must have the concept of macroscopic and microscopic view. If our mind is not open, we will not have those microscopic view. So the definition of opening up our mind is to be able to visualize macroscopically and microscopically. Once we open our mind and be visualizing those two aspects right away, we can holistically look at things as oneness, just like she alluded to. Right. And we can see the connectivity between everything, like Jonathan. And that is exactly the correct approach to the big questions. Right? So, these are the questions you should be asking. Why do you not ask me this? How many atoms are there in a flame? How many atoms are there in the wind? How many atoms are there in the five senses? And so on and so on. So that's how the Buddha answered. In the sutra, or in the teaching, he taught in Sri Lanka. Alright, thank you. So now we can continue with our PowerPoint. We call this kind of teaching, or the way to enlightenment, Dharma. And Dharma progresses over time, which is called turning of the Dharma wheel. But actually, turning of the Dharma wheel is not a wheel turning in a fixed position. It's like the wheel on a vehicle. It advances. The wheel turns to bring the vehicle in motion. Okay, so we have to progress in space and time. We don't turn the Dharma wheel in a stationary position. Turning of the Dharma wheel means advancement. We have to advance with time. We have to catch up with the time, with modern times, with its new scientific knowledge, logic, and what we know now. Now the Buddha is about 2,500 years ago. This sutra appeared about 400 years after the Buddha passed away. Well, it's a Mahayana sutra. But we will go into those, evolution of Buddhism much later on, maybe 2 or 3 years from now. Suffice to say that based on some of the teaching of the Buddha in Sri Lanka, 300 years after he passed away, the sutra appeared. What is the contribution of the chapter 1 of the sutra? It provides the initial drive. And we call the AW curriculum, Year 1, initial drive. It uses numbers, quantities, weights, and length measurement to do what? So number 1, force us to open our mind. And number 2, to visualize microscopic and macroscopic realities. But if you read the sutra, you will find that it is not very systematic, as we've just gone through some of them, right? The questions were asked pretty much randomly, and the answer was given, without much systematic train of thought in it. We talk about weight, we talk about what. So if you don't get what he's trying to say, you'll be lost quickly. So it's not very systematic, and it did not explain clearly how does visualization help to answer the big question. Right? The Buddha just said, Bodhisattva with wisdom, you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking these questions. Well, he didn't explain why these questions helps to answer the other big questions. So those are the deficits. It kickstarts everything. It makes a 2-point contribution, but it needs to be improved the point. The Dharma will needs to evolve. So, next slide please. The evolution is the next big sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra. So this appeared about 500 to 600 years after the Buddha passed away, or 100 to 200 years after the Lanka Sutra. So after 100 or 200 years, it was recognized more needs to be done. It needs to systematize. So this huge volume of sutra appeared. Okay. This is a huge sutra. If we read it every day, it takes about 20 days to finish reading it from beginning to end. And that is if you're reading like 8 hours a day and someone is cooking for you. 8 to 10 hours a day. That's all you do. Just read the sutra from page 1 to the end. It will take you 20 days to read it. The Avatamsaka Sutra, in length, or great, or vast, dimension, in wide and profound, right? So what are those dimensions? Opening up our heart, capacity. Enlightenment, Buddha, right? Flower, dignity. So what it means is we have to have a wide, open, infinite dimensional capacity in order to be enlightened to dignified life. Flower is a metaphor for the most prosperous transformation of the life force, because a plant cannot flower until it has reached its blossom, They say, oh, it's blossoming. That means the life force is coming out. So how does it take? It takes opening up our mind, first of all, to become enlightened. Then we can dignify life. Otherwise, life itself is indignant. The meaning of life. Excellent question. Okay, remember this now? We start with 10 million, which is a koji, with 8 digits. And then we go through reading, reciting this. From operation number 1 to operation number 8, on the left-hand side column, we keep on going and going, just like this. And then we go from 113 operations to 140 operations by adding those units, unequal times unequal equals unequal square, unequal square times unequal square equals unequal cube, and so on. Dr. Chen has brought us through all this. The whole purpose of this is a systematic way of forcing our mind to go into the big dimensions. Next one, please. Also, notice that this unit that is arbitrarily named or labeled or imposed upon these numbers are abstract terms, unspeakable, immeasurable. And yet, by using this contradiction, this is measurable. This is finite numbers. But the terms we put there are descriptive and abstract. See? Already in the nomenclature of the system, is built in a contradiction for us to start building up a wise thinking mode that quality can be quantified, abstract can become material, so that we're beginning to transcend the duality thinking mode. Next slide, please. What this sutra does, it forces us, using number system, go from our thinking box of trillion, quadrillion, gazillion, quadrillion, all the way challenging the whole concept of infinity. Until we prove to ourselves the concept of infinity is invalid. It's invalid because we are able to keep on putting on more and more dimensional label unit. All we have to do is stay on course. Staying on course means we have to not be bored. As we are counting those numbers, how many of us feel bored? Feels irrelevant. We lose attention span. That is a measure of our life force. As soon as we lose the desire to continue accomplishing the task of counting, that's when we lose the Zen. We lose the tranquility. Right? That is what Zen does for us. We practice Zen so that it will build up our life force to accomplish a task in a tranquil state. So we can break through this using that sutra. Next, please. So about 2,000 years ago, the Avatamsaka Sutra opens our mind. How does it do it? It does it three ways. Number one, it now systematically, it doesn't do like the Lankavatara Sutra is jumping from place to place. It only uses one measurement, but over 120 operations of the same measurement of length. Systematically expand the units of measurement. Doesn't talk about weight anymore. Doesn't talk about other measurement. Doesn't even talk about atoms and quantums and stuff like Lankavatara Sutra talked about. And it clearly elucidated those thinking box limitations. And it challenged the concept of infinity, basically abolished that whole concept of infinity for us. So these are the contributions of this great sutra. And there are still more to be decided. It did not elucidate how to transcend duality. Now there's a little difference here. We can get rid of the concept of infinity, but it doesn't clearly say you have transcended duality by doing so. The sutra doesn't say that. You just finish, right? When you count to untold, finished. It did not clearly tell you that connect the dot from point number 3 to point number 4. So after that, how to attain equanimity? Buddhism will always say every living being is equal. We are all one. How? Why? That's totally different from you. How do we attain equanimity from this number counting? The sutra does not clearly explain that. In fact, there's no mention of it. So after our mind is opened up and the thinking box eliminated, how then we attain equanimity and transcend duality, which are the key teachings in Buddhism. The sutra does not clearly explain that. Next slide, please. That is why our curriculum exists. We simply use the modern science today to supplement to build on the shoulder of giants and to supplement, to move the Dharma wheel forward, to turn the Dharma wheel. In our series of lectures, we are trying to accomplish these 4 objectives. That is how we transcend duality. Finite and infinite is a duality. 2 opposing concepts by definition. We transcend it. So after that, how then do you resolve opposite conflicts? And how to go from quality to quantity? We show we attain equanimity by going from the relative to the absolute. Okay. Now these 4 points are not so easy to comprehend. We'll take it slowly. Okay? So next one. First let's look at this. Finite, infinite. By definition, two very opposite things. By counting numbers, we dispel, we agree and understand definition. Now remember the free speed learning, number 1, definition, right? No problem. We accept the world's definition. But the enlightened person go beyond understanding definition. We understand the limits of definition and we go beyond definition. Okay, that's what an open mind does for us. That's what enlightenment does for us. So, clearly, our series of lecture has, yes, we understand definition, and yes, we've gone beyond definition. We have obliterated these two as conflicting, mutually exclusive concepts. In the enlightened mind, these two opposite, mutually exclusive entities can be accommodated, can exist simultaneously, right? Now that's a breakthrough. The definition says these two are mutually exclusive. They cannot occur in the same space-time in our thinking mode. What we're saying today is, yes, they can occur at the same time, and they are not mutually exclusive. Alright? In fact, they are equal. That's equanimity. This is not measurable. It's a qualifier. This is measurable. It's a quantity. So we go from quality to quantity. These two are relative to one another. We go from relative to absolute. What is absolute? Absolute is simply absolute. So like Jonathan says, there's no more word after that. Once you break through that box, it's absolute. Right? Because if you bring the word relative to qualify the word absolute, absolute is no longer absolute. It becomes a duality again. Right? So you have absolute versus relative. It becomes a duality. These are very fine thinking processes. Alright, any questions? Okay, next slide. So how do we resolve the world's conflict? All of the human problems. How do we attain a comfortable peace of mind? How to really look at things from an equal footing, from equanimity point of view? Well, we ask ourselves, what is the biggest conflict the human mind can conceive? Any idea? Life after death. Right. Life, death. Living versus dying. That's life. There's life after death, death after life, life after death. That's this thing. By looking at this way, with living and dying seems to be two opposing concepts. But if life and death is an infinite circle anyways, these two are no longer opposite. They're just the side and the back of the hand together makes up the whole reality. So life goes on. You can say death goes on. Right? So this is absolute. This is an absolute concept. These two are relative concepts. Once we have the absolute concept, then the relative becomes absolute. And we are able to accommodate the two in the same thinking mode. So what is the biggest conflict the human mind can conceive of?
If you see anything different than from your point of view, then you consider that it's a conflict, and that's what I understand.
Okay. So basically, Jesus described this whole thing. Everything, if you can see everything from a different point, the other side, right? You see one side, one viewpoint, and you look at it from another viewpoint. So that it, she's correct. She just described the whole slide for us. Well, let me make it simpler. Everything listed here, which is the biggest conflict? Yes, please stop.
In the previous lectures, I used to agree with you that finite and infinite are the biggest challenges in the whole slide. Actually, after today, I think relative and absolute is even bigger than finite and infinite, which is not on the slide.
Okay. So, as you can see, when the human mind conceives of infinity, that means beyond what we can think about, okay, that as opposed to finite, that is probably the biggest conflict the human mind can conceive of, right? Because the human mind cannot conceive of infinity. It's bigger than the human mind. Okay? You see what I mean? Follow? Infinity is the biggest thing the human mind can conceive of. Right? If you can resolve the conflict, that's the biggest thing the human mind can conceive of. Everything else are smaller subsets of that big conflict. Right? By breaking through the very first item, the rest are easy. The rest are just phenomena. Part of that reality. So life and death, infinite lifetimes of life and death, and so on. Heaven versus hell, right? God is infinite, and so on. So these are just smaller subsets of that. Alright. The Tao is called yin versus yang. And yin-yang makes up the totality. No problem. So, duality, what's the meaning of duality? Exactly. Dr. Chen is looking at the title of the slide. Relative versus absolute. So if you go higher, bigger, look at the big picture. See, so his answer is quite correct because all my questions are answered right up there. Okay, so this is fun. So any more comments, questions? Okay, next slide please. I will skip through this quickly because these slides Dr. Chen already took us through last time. Next one, take-home message, finite. And here, this quantification is very important. Because when we think something is abstract, it's not quantifiable, what we imply to ourselves is that that is not achievable. It's utopia, it's a dream. But as soon as any abstract concept can be quantified, we suggest to ourselves it's doable. It's not just utopic dream. We can build it. We can make it happen. So that's how the human mind thinks. That's why quantity is so important. Next slide, please. The power of quantification. Qualities are descriptive, quantities are definitive. Qualities are relative, quantities are absolute. Once you go from all the relative into the absolute, that's it, nirvana. Quantity makes us fall into duality because we are describing something only from one point of view, like she says. And there's always an opposing point of view. And that's what forms duality. Once you break through duality, is singularity. Singularity is the same as absolute. There's nothing to compare to. So the AW curriculum, next slide please, achieved the 1, 2, 3, 4 objective for us. Okay. And that's how we take the Dharma wheel forward. So I'm exactly on time, right to the second. The clock is pointing at 4:30. Any comments from the class? So, what Dr. Chen presented to us earlier on is it demonstrates the scientific relevance of the macroscopic and microscopic visualization, which is absent in the two sutras. It's in the AWE curriculum that we took the concept of microscopic visualization and put some scientific relevance to it. That is why our icon is science equals Buddhism equals philosophy. We need that to teach Buddhism. It links a continuum of dimensions. What's a continuum of dimensions? Remember, when we go up to the power 10 to the power 22, there's no more. It's beyond our knowledge. It's metaphysical. If we go down to the 10 to the power negative 17, after the quarks and the Higgs bosons and so on, there's no more. There's nothing physical to the human mind anymore. When it's non-physical to the human mind, we call it metaphysical. But everything between 10 to the power negative 17 to 10 to the power positive 22 are physical realities to the human mind. So what our curriculum has done is to link the continuum from the metaphysical to the physical, using a very simple mathematical progression series. Just add 10, 10, 10. That is very, very crucial. And we solve the ultimate contradictions that we've already gone through in detail, previous slides. And now, this is the part that many of us might have missed when we are counting the units along with Dr. Chen. Counting those numbers is actually a measurement of each and every one of the classmates' focusing power, our power of concentration, our attention span, our emotional reaction to a very simple task, whether we feel bored, whether you feel irrelevant, whether you feel, oh, I already know what you're driving at, why you keep on this mundane process of counting numbers. Resistance to a task, to a simplest task you can think of. We resist it. The I, ego, resist it. That is why we have slow learning. We don't have speed learning because of this emotional reaction to the speed learning. This emotional reaction to task counted, and therefore you will not accomplish that task. Imagine if we saw counting at gazillion, we will not be having this lecture. Right? We would have dropped out from the class. So this I, ego, self resistance is that obstacle to the speed learning. In fact, it's the complete resistance to the new age teaching of Buddhism. And here, most important, it measures our life force. Samadhi power. The power of samadhi, whether we are in a tranquil state to accomplish a simple task. So all this is embedded in our lecture. You won't even realize it, but you've already learned deep into Zen. And that is what we try to do. Next slide, please. So, if there are no more questions, let us do the transfer of merit. By this habit, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their mind be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine through our all realms.